The 1940s to 60s was a time filled with war. Humans can only take so much of this fighting before they break down. To be able to avoid that, they thought of fun things to do to boost morale and let things go for a few hours at a time. This went for all 3 decades, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but the 1940s was the beginning of the culture-changing pastime called dancing. The main world events that happened in the 1940s were the Battle of Britain, Pearl Harbor, the Battle of Midway, the dropping of atomic bombs, and, of course, World War II. Many American soldiers that came overseas to Britain also brought along with them a dance called the jitterbug. At first, the British, especially the men, thought that these new people who looked different and had different accents
Kitty cat
were crazy and didn't like the new dance they were doing. But after a while, they began to see that the jitterbug made previous dances seem conservative and dull. The young people found that they loved to dance, especially young women who worked in munition factories or on the land all day for their part of the war effort. Dancing gave people the opportunity to forget the hardships of war, if only for a temporary amount of time. The 1950s decade was considered to be the good times. Men came home from the war, meaning families were reunited and engagements became marriages. The war and depression seemed to be distant memories. The whole country felt good about itself. Life was simple. Society was in a time where women stayed as housewives, men worked to support their families, and children were to be seen, not heard. After a while, the younger people grew tired of this and needed to let go of the strict rules. This is how rock and roll, and singers like Elvis, rose in popularity very quickly. Though the younger people were still respectable to adults and were dignified and decent, rock and roll was an outlet that was available to them and was used constantly. The Vietnam War, Korean War, and the beginning of the Cold War gave more reason to people to do fun things such as dancing. During the 60s, the American population greeted the war with protests and very little support. With the Cold War already on their shoulders, the Vietnam War pushed people too far, sparking things like the hippie movement. America had entered a massive culture change, and with political tensions surrounding them, many people found that music and dancing were the only ways they could express their views and feelings on the world's events. As society was showing signs of being an individual, dancing was parallel to this. Couples dancing began turning into no-touching dancing. Organized steps and beats changed to freestyle, which usually consisted of mimicking people or activities such as surfers or swimming.
Then I saw her face.